Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to episode 49 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast with me, Rory Lees-Oakes, and with me, refreshed and rejuvenated from his summer break, Mr. Ken Kelly. How are you, Ken?
I am exceptionally well, Rory. It is great to be back. It's great to be back on the mic with you, Rory. And it's great to be back in the ears, living rooms, cars of you, our listener. It really is. I feel rejuvenated. I feel fresh. I feel raring to go. I know, Rory, you and I have so many plans that we put together during the break that we are so looking forward to implementing and bringing.
Absolutely, Ken. We've been very busy. Yes, we have had a break, but we've been very busy, and we will speak more about our busyness and our plans that we fermented over the break later on in the show. But I was thinking, Ken, just how important it is that people do have breaks, and it is, after all, in the BACP ethical framework, an ethical kind of imperative that we operate self-care.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
And it leads neatly into our rundown of what you can expect from us today. We're going to be starting off speaking about that self-care, about breaks, and of course warmly welcoming you back with a big hug. And then we're going to be looking at theory with Rory, where Rory is going to be speaking about Jonah complex, which kind of links in to self-actualization, something I'm really looking forward to. And we're going to be ending today's episode with that little teaser that Rory gave you, that we've got some exciting news, the stuff that Rory and I have been busy with. And it's about you planning for your year ahead. And we're speaking, I guess, in the UK, so we speak generally about the UK academic year, and we're going into a new academic year in the UK, and it's about how you plan for your upcoming year in terms of what resources you put in place to underpin and support you with your studies. But you mentioned the ethical framework, you mentioned the importance of those breaks. We're coming back from a break. What does the ethical framework kind of infer about us taking breaks?
Well, it doesn't say anything specifically about breaks, but it does say that we must work in a way that doesn't be diminished by it. And let's be honest. For those of us who've been in practice for a long time, we hear very, very heavy material, very heavy, and sometimes quite sad and touching narratives from our clients. And of course, we have supervision as a way of releasing any difficulties we may have, any parallel processes, any transference. We also have access to our own therapy. Therapists do go and find their own therapy. Sometimes, something comes up and all of a sudden one realizes that the stuff that you thought you'd put to bed and had been resolved many years ago is still active, or it's come up again. And, therapists go to their own therapy to work that through. But I think most importantly is having a break, just doing something different, not being in practice, not making podcasts, not doing anything related to the work, and doing something different, defining yourself in a different way, Ken.
I like that very much. And, I reflect on what you're saying, and I look to myself, and something that I can share is I've recently been to supervision, and I went to supervision after a break, and I took a grand total of 1 client hour to supervision because I've been away, and my clients have been away as well, because it is the UK summertime, and that little narrow section of summer that we do get here in the UK, we can kind of tend to embrace that, and a lot of people do go away. But it was really interesting in going to supervision. I recognized in what a different place I found myself from the previous supervision that I'd been to before the break. And before the break, I was frustrated, I was carrying stuff, I was feeling emotional. And after the break, coming back, I felt refreshed and ready to carry on. And nothing happened. It was just a break, and it's amazing. I wasn't thinking about my client load. I wasn't processing my client load. I was, as you said, Rory, I'd switched off, and I was thinking of something completely non-related in Anglesey, in North Wales. I was thinking about my daughter. I was thinking about watching my dog swimming in the sea. I was thinking about those 2 days of sunshine that we enjoyed while we were there in between the rain. But coming back, I was so refreshed and ready to start again. And we look at burnout. Burnout is when you start feeling those emotions, feel that you can't go on, and the smallest things in your practice are really affecting you. And we're called upon to look at self-care. It's in the ethical framework, and taking breaks when we need them is part of that vital, vital self-care.
I absolutely agree with you, Ken, and I can echo your feelings and experience. I enjoyed nothing more than having a cup of tea and looking out of the window. I could do that for hours. And in fact, I do look out of the window for hours, Ken, with a cup of tea. And most of my family think I'm crazy, but I really enjoy it. I could stare out the window for hours. And it kind of strikes me that one of the things that having breaks does is extends your life within the work. Mm-hmm. Because if you have breaks, you rejuvenate yourself, you kind of exercise that self-care. You don't let the work define you. I think that's so important. I think that it can be completely overwhelming, and some people just define themselves. There's so much more to me, and I know there's so much more to you than being a therapist, being on the podcast. People just see the professional side of us in these podcasts, or the kind of public side of us, but there's so much more to both of us. And it does extend your life within the work. It means you can carry on working, and as you say, not getting burnt out, or even worse, in my view, case hardened, where you lose empathy for the client, you lose the ability to see the world as they do, and you just become disconnected. The relationship just doesn't form.
And there it is, like clearly illustrated in practice terms. But I also recognize you listening to this, and it may well be you've had a break from your studies. And I know from the tone of the conversations that were in our Facebook feed, and if you're not a member of the Counselling Tutor Facebook group, go and jump in there. We've got over 11,000 people, fellow students from all around the world, and we have the greatest of conversation. We even got some tutors in there as well, apart from myself and Rory. And of course, if you want to find that, just go onto Facebook and type in Counselling Tutor, and it's right there. But the tone of the conversations towards the end of the academic year was one of stress. It was one of anxiety. It was one of, dare I say, panic, with people coming to the end of their submitting portfolios, having to do assignments, having to get work in on time. And if you go and look at the topics now, they're a lot lighter, a lot airier. And that reflects, I guess, the break pending before going into this new academic year, the new year of study, where once again we're going to be doing our skills, we're going to be doing our theory, we're going to be doing our professional practice issues, we're going to be back with our peers, and we come in hopefully refreshed from the breaks that we've taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just finally, before we move on to the new topic, I'm sure there are going to be sections of our audience who will be breathing a sigh of relief. And those would be, of course, the people who've passed their qualifications. And we must really send a hearty congratulations to those who've passed. And maybe our condolences to those people who may have to resubmit pieces of work. I know that does happen. But yeah, stay with us. Please stay with us in the group. And we'd love to see your graduation pictures, and again, showing just a different side of the work, the celebratory side of the work, which is just so important, Ken.
It is indeed. So on that topic, and closing it down, of the refreshedness of coming back and having that break from your studies, we now look at going forward to the new year and what that might look like. And part of studies is theory. And of course, theory can for some be quite challenging. Not for everyone, but for some it can be quite challenging. There's nobody I know on this planet that I feel can put complex theory into easy, understandable words than you, Rory. You really have a skill there. It's a knack. It's a gift that you have to take stuff that I don't understand, put it in a couple of sentences that I go, oh, is that what you mean? And a theory that I really don't understand is the Jonah complex, which you're going to be covering today. Can you kind of give us a bit of a taster of what we can expect?
Yes, apart from being slightly boyish and embarrassed about your accolades, Ken. The Jonah complex, which is the complete opposite of how I feel at this moment, it's something identified by Abraham Maslow, who, of course, was a huge contributor to the humanistic movement, and there was an influence on Rogers and indeed all those humanists who trod the paths into, different modalities of therapy. And he identified a trait in some people that is from the Bible, and indeed it is mentioned in the Quran, called the Jonah theory. about how we hide from our greatness, Ken. And I'm going to be speaking about that. And I'm hoping I'm going to just give those who are starting and maybe a little worried, maybe a little nervous, the idea that really they should embrace the greatness, embrace themselves, and be great in the world.
So I look forward to hearing that theory put into understandable words, Rory. And just before we go into theory with Rory, we're just going to stop in at our sponsors. If you enjoy the topics and handouts here on the Counselling Tutor Podcast, then you will love the Counselling Study Resource. CSR was built by myself, Ken, and Rory Lees Oakes to give you the support you need during your counselling studies. So get access to the world's most comprehensive collection of resources aimed at supporting you in your journey to become a counsellor. Take the stress out of your studies by visiting counsellingtutor.com/CSR. That's counsellingtutor.com/CSR.
Counselling Theory with Rory Lees Oakes.
A few days ago, I received a communication from a former learner thanking me for my teaching and saying that she was moving in now to professional practice after qualifying this year. One thing I was struck about was a sentence in her communication. She said, and I quote, "Thank you for showing me in practice the importance of self-belief." And it links very strongly to today's theory called the Jonah complex. It was first coined by American psychologist and humanist Abraham Maslow, famous for the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as well as coining the term the third force in psychology, which relates, of course, to humanistic psychotherapy. He was a collaborator with Carl Rogers and influenced many more therapists of the time. A little known fact is that he was a member of the Human Potential Movement, or HPM, a collaboration of like-minded thinkers in the world of psychotherapy and philosophy who were interested in human potential from a humanistic perspective. And he really did pioneer the idea of humanism as a force in psychology. In fact, between him and Rogers, they've literally carved a new path in the psychological ground. Amongst the luminaries in the human potential movement were names such as Abraham Maslow himself, Eric Berne, Carl Rogers, and Fritz Perls, all of whom were interested effectively in one way or another in phenomenology, the theory or the philosophical theory of perception. Now, Maslow went on to write a book, and he called the book The Farther Reaches of Human Nature. It was published in 1971, and in it he outlined an idea generated from observation called the Jonah complex. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Jonah and the whale, or Jonah and the fish, depending on which text you read, it's a parable from the Bible. It can be found in the Quran, and also it can be found in the Old Testament, or the Torah. And it's basically the story of Jonah, who tried to escape from God by hiding in a whale. And eventually, after 3 days, God commanded the whale to spit out Jonah so that he couldn't hide from his destiny. He couldn't hide from the path he was going to take. And that really is the parable of Jonah and the whale, that you cannot hide from your destiny. And what Maslow did, he linked this idea into the Jonah complex, in that we have defense mechanisms and barriers that stop us realizing our own unique potential, our own greatness. It holds us back from really thinking that we can be great in the world and that we can be the best we can be. It's an interesting theory, and one that's gone on to develop other theories, and one of them is FOI, Means and Thorn, a right-in-person centered therapy today, which is the handbook of most person-centred trainees, of feelings of incompetence, or FOI. And FOI is where students defeat themselves or think they're not good enough or think that they can't do it or their skills aren't good enough, or they really just don't believe that they're going to be effective. I've seen that not only as a tutor, but it's a feeling that I had, if I'm honest, when I was a student, that I wasn't really the real deal. And it's interesting that through the years, it's spawned a lot of like-minded ideas. One of them being imposter syndrome. It was a term coined in 1978 by clinical psychologists Pauline Artlance and Susan A. Imnes. And imposter syndrome is where people literally think that any minute someone's going to come running through the door and say to them, you're not really a, list what it is, psychotherapist, nurse, doctor, police officer, vet. You're really an imposter. And people actually believe that somehow they're not good enough. So as a final end to this piece, I'd like to share a story of Roger's own view of what good enough looked like. In the 1970s, there's a film of Roger's about to conduct in front of an audience of his peers a psychotherapeutic encounter with the client. Client was quite happy to be counselled in front of a group of people. Rogers addresses the audience and then walks towards the client and then pauses and stops and walks back to again face the audience. And he says that in this encounter, the only thing that is really important is for me to be as real as I can and effectively myself. And I say that's the message I would give to you. Your greatness as a therapist is yourself. And that's evidenceable by the fact that it's well acknowledged in lots of research that the best outcomes in psychotherapy and counselling are not particularly from the modalities that someone's trained in, but their ability to form a relationship and form a deep therapeutic alliance with the client where trust is generated.
Thank you very much, Rory. And there you have it. You cannot hide from your destiny. Did I say that right, Rory?
You did, and there's no whales to be hidden in the classroom.
And of course, you want to get hold of the handout that Rory has prepared for this, and it's a significant handout. It's what we would maybe call an authority handout. You can get that by simply going to the podcast page. Now, our podcasts all live on our mother site, and our mother site is counsellingtutor.com, and that's counselling spelt with 2 L's because we are based in the UK. Counsellingtutor.com, and when you go to the Counselling Tutor, there's a little tab that says podcasts, and if you click on that, all the episodes are linked there. Just go down to episode 49, and right there on the page are the show notes, everything we've spoken about today, with your easy reference links to what we discuss, and of course you can download those high authority resources, including the excerpt from the book that Rory mentioned, In Theory with Rory. And I'm recognizing you spend a lot of time, Rory, looking for high quality resources, and it leads really neatly onto the topic that we're looking to cover now, and that is planning your resources for your upcoming study. Because I've noticed, and specifically when we were teaching, can't say it, but we did it, we're teaching together, when we were lecturing together, Rory, that there sometimes tends to be a lastminute.com strive for getting the right information when the assignment is due 2 days later, and there's a mad rush and a mad search on Google to find information that's going to help support and get that assignment in. And I'm mindful that if we kind of plan ahead for our resources, we can kind of get our resources together before we have that mad panic, and that's the topic of this.
It is really, Ken, and there's a famous management mantra that I've been on when I was in business in training courses, and it was called the P's. Poor pre-planning equals piddly poor performance.
Love it. Love it.
And I used the word piddly. It wasn't actually piddly. It was another word, but it's a family show. And it's very, very true. I think like in anything in life, you need to plan out. And part of that planning is to understand what resources you need to bring to the party of your assignments. So high quality resources. And we have Google, and let's face it, Google is the internet now. And unfortunately, some of the resources that are on Google can be written by anybody. Anybody can write anything on Google. And there is an online library called Wikipedia, like an online encyclopedia. And the difficulty with Wikipedia, and the reason that academics and teachers and tutors don't like it, is that anybody can put anything up. And shall I give you the example of someone who put up a pen portrait of the people in my next village? They put up that everybody who lived in Upper Mill, which is the next village to me, only had one toe, and that was it on their feet. There's one toe and nothing else. And everybody knows that everybody in Upper Mill has actually just two toes.
Wow.
And that's the difficulty. And that is why, in the rush to do assignments, people go to Wikipedia or other online sites. And sometimes they're not like Counselling Tutor, as you said earlier, Ken, which is the authority, which is carefully chosen resources to make sure that when you put your assignment in, it's accurate.
100%, well referenced. And I guess, I'm thinking that Google is the source of all knowledge now. Anything you need to know, you can pop on Google, type in any topic, and you're going to have thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of results that are going to come up for you. And it's about which one of those results is the proper resource to go to. And knowledge is now kind of available by the bucket load in this modern age. But knowledge is useless unless that knowledge is usable. And I think what you do really well, Rory, is you bring these topics week after week, Theory with Rory, the things that we discuss in the podcast, and you go and get the information on that. You research it, and you go to authority sites to do that, and then you condense that down. You distill it down into that is usable. Because there's books that have been written just on the Jonah complex, which you spoke about, but you're able to go and pull out the main concept of that, distill it down into that is usable at the time that it is needed by our learners, the people that choose to engage with us. And with that in mind, if you go to the Counselling Tutor website, counsellingtutor.com, you'll notice that most of our posts, whether it be about theory, whether it be about skills, most of our podcasts carry a handout. But it can be I guess, confusing to try and find the right topic of the right handout at the right time. And that's why Rory and I have put something really special together. We have done some curation. Now, that was a new word for me, Rory. Curation, basically meaning we've taken things and put them together. We've curated. It was a new word. I didn't know it. I was looking at it. I thought, well, that's a nice word. We've curated all of our handouts, all of our ebooks, all of our downloads that we offer on Counselling Tutor. We've put them into one place, and we're calling it the Digital Handout Vault. And that is a new addition to our counselling study resource. And if you go to today's show notes, which is counsellingtutor.com, podcast tab, episode 49. We're going to have a link there that will show you how you can get those handouts. There is a small fee to join the handouts vault. However, it gives you a year-long access. And any new information that Rory or myself find and that we make available will be put into that handouts vault. So it's updated all the time, and it's really searchable. You can actually search it by topic. You can type a topic in and it will show you just the handouts that apply to that topic. So hopefully that is a source of really good quality resources that you can use.
Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking about this, Ken, I'm so fortunate in having been in the profession for nearly 15 years now. I know some fantastic people top of their profession, researchers, and if I don't know the answer, I can always get on the phone to them and say, what about this? And usually people are very kind and say, well, it's like this, Rory. And, so, part of that is the fact that, yes, I've got a quite a considerable library, but also I've got incredibly good contacts, people who are, I won't mention people's names, but well-known and well-respected in the profession who I'm in regular contact with to explain theory and just to get a bit deeper, certainly modalities maybe that I've not studied in.
100%. So there's one area where we can look for resources that might help us underpin our studies going forward, not just for assignments, just to broaden your knowledge if you want to read a little deeper on a topic or a subject. But another area is that you've just mentioned, Rory, and I have the benefit of being able to see you because we do our recordings over Skype, and Rory's waving. He's waving now. I'm just going to describe everything that's happening here. Now he's put his thumb on his nose and he's wiggling his fingers. He's doing this on purpose to put me off. But I can see behind Rory, and I see shelves and shelves and shelves that are laden with another really good resource for you and your studies, and those are books. Now, Rory, I don't know if you know anything about books.
Strangely enough, yeah, yes. My wife hates me going into charity shops because I usually come out laden with books. I picked up Maurice Merleau-Ponty's Phenomenology for £7 in an Oxfam shop.
Wow,
£7, and it's brilliant. And yes, I love books. I've always loved reading. And one of the things I'd say about counselling books is that there are core books you're going to have to buy or get hold of. And most academic establishments do a reading list. And I'm really pleased that someone sent me a reading list the other day, and at the bottom was counsellingtutor.com. So we're on the reading list for a lot of universities and a lot of colleges and private training providers now in terms of resources. But in terms of books, what I would say is try and get the most up-to-date ones. There can be a temptation to buy older books. There's lots of people who are selling the book libraries off. And I've noticed that a lot of them are in older editions. And I think there can be a bit of a danger in that. And first of all, there's a very famous book, Standards and Ethics in Counselling. I've got the one I had 15 years ago, which is virtually falling apart now. And the new one, which I was sent a few weeks ago, completely different because it represents the profession as it is now.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. So if you're buying anything that's to do with ethics, you buy the up-to-date book. They're not cheap, but you buy the up-to-date one. Even person-centered counselling in action. I was noticing in my copy, they were talking about touching therapy and touching clients. In the middle copies, they recanted their ideas and said, the world's changed, and we live in a litigious society, and maybe that's not a good idea. And in this latest incantation that I've got, I was sent, there's no mention of it at all.
Wow. So
it's so important that when you're reading anything that's practice-based, theory doesn't particularly matter because theories are theories. Carl Rogers' Way of Being was published in 1985. That's not going to change. On Becoming a Person, I think it was 1961. That's not going to change. The games people play, Burn,
yep.
That's not going to change. That's the theory, But when it comes to practice-based literature,
yep.
Get the latest.
Yeah, specifically ethics and the law.
Absolutely.
Very, very much so.
Absolutely. And I've been editing handouts, strangely enough, not strangely enough, but for the CSR, we've been migrating and I've been updating a lot more information into our counselling study resource, our library that we've talked about. And some of them I've had to kind of look and say, well, I can't use that anymore because he talks about the Race Relations Act, which of course doesn't exist anymore. It's the Equalities Act in the UK.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to be using old literature and quoting something, and then your tutor comes back to you and goes, well, actually, that law doesn't apply anymore.
Oh, 100%. And it's such a common topic around this time of year on the Counselling Tutor within our Counselling Tutor Facebook group. There's a lot of people saying, I'm starting a level 4 course. Anybody recommend any books that I should be reading? And it can seem quite overwhelming if you go on back again to Google, the source of all knowledge, Rory, and you start looking for counselling books. You just given back so many different results, and it's difficult to know which are the right books. And that's why Rory has gone ahead and put together a recommended reading list. Now, this recommended reading list is updated. So it's an updatable document. It lives online. And every time you click on the link to have a look at it, Rory has added the latest books that he believes are right for the study. And this is from recommendations from fellow tutors, recommendations from learners of what they found useful, and of course, from the, hundreds of books, Rory, that you have personally read, because I'm looking at your shelf and I know you've read them all on your shelf over there. And And that you can also find in our handouts vault. So we've got a copy of Rory's recommended reading list, and that is in the handouts vault. And again, if you want to find that, you just go to counsellingtutor.com to episode 49, the show notes page, and the link is there for you of how you can get access to that handouts vault.
Yes, absolutely. So in summary, I would say if you're buying books on theory, you can buy them secondhand. You can get them quite cheaply. I picked up some absolute bargains. I found for £1 in my local supermarket A Way of Being. £1. Go on, becoming a person. £1, and it hasn't hardly been used. Now, it's been reproduced many times, and that particular book is quite an old copy, but it's still Carl Rogers' words. And I picked up for 30p The Games People Play. Again, that's Eric Burns' words. But so if you're buying theory books, you can buy them secondhand, save yourself a fortune. But if you're buying practice-based, get the latest ones. That's Rory's top tip for today.
I like it. And on that top tip, we're coming right to the end. Just one more thing to throw in there. Another great resource for your study is counsellingtutor.com. You're listening to the podcast right now. We've got a back catalogue of 48 other podcasts apart from this one, all full of great information on varying topics. And they're all searchable from counsellingtutor.com. Click the podcast tab. There's a search bar there. You can search the topic. It's going to bring up what you need to know. So just recapping, we had that welcome. We looked at the importance of breaks and that self-care. Thank you, Rory, for Theory with Rory, Jonah Complex, and of course we ended off just looking at the resources that may help underpin your studies going forward for this year. What a cracker. I am delighted to be back, and I'm looking forward to the special announcement, Rory, that we have, and I'm not giving any more away, in episode 15. You're going to have to hang in there. This is like one of those soap operas where they leave you with a cliffhanger. I'm almost tempted to go doof, 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 doof.
Yeah, well, on that kind of quite soap opera based note, literally, we'll leave you, and hey, stay grounded and stay safe.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.